Hello wonderful learners, welcome back to P.O.D official channel. My name is Desmond Amoa, and in today's video we are going to look at the arrangement of elements in the periodic table. Alright, so before we start, let's look at the periodic table in general. The periodic table is a chart that displays all elements in columns and in rows. So if you look at the periodic table over here, this is the column. This is the column. So we have this column, and the column is the group of elements, and this is the row, and then the row is the period of elements. So if you look at the elements in here, they are arranged from hydrogen to calcium, and the number of protons is what we use to arrange the elements. So the first element, that is hydrogen, is having 1 proton. So it is the first element on the periodic table. And then the number of protons of calcium is 20. So it is the 20th element on the periodic table. So that is the arrangement of elements in the periodic table. So we can find the period and then the group of each of the elements on the periodic table by just looking at their position. So if you look at this element, boron, so boron is in group 3 and also in period 2. So you can just find the period and then the group by just looking at it from the periodic table. But what if the periodic table is not given? How can you find the elements? Alright, so we are going to do that by studying the atomic structure. So we are going to study the atomic structure and use that one to find the group and then the period of each of the elements in the periodic table. Alright, so this is the atomic structure of the atom. So the atom has a central nucleus which contains protons, which is positively charged, neutrons, which has no charge, and then also electrons, which are located on the shell of the atom. We also have the names of all the shells in the atom. That's the K shell, the L shell, the M shell, and then the N shell. The K shell takes a maximum of 2 electrons. The L shell takes a maximum of 8 electrons. And then the M shell also takes a maximum of 8 electrons. And the last shell, that's the N shell, takes a maximum of 8 electrons. Remember, these numbers tells you whether the atom is stable or fully filled or not, whether the shells are fully filled or not. So the K shell needs 2 electrons for it to be fully filled. The L shell needs 8 electrons for it to be fully filled. The M shell takes 8 electrons, and then the N shell also takes 8 electrons for it to be fully filled. So with this idea, let's draw the electronic configuration of one of the elements here for us to be able to find the group and then the period. So let's take aluminium, for instance. So aluminium is having the proton number 13. The proton number 13. So let's take aluminium. So aluminium has the proton number 13. And remember, the proton number is the same as the atomic number. So we are going to draw the electronic configuration of aluminium. So we start drawing the smaller circle in the middle, that's the nucleus, then the first shell, the second shell, and then the third shell. So let's represent all the electrons on the shells. So the first shell, remember, the first shell, that's the K shell. It takes how many electrons? 2 electrons for it to be fully filled. So we represent 2 electrons over here. The second shell takes 8 electrons. So we represent 8 electrons over here. So we have how many electrons here? That's 10 electrons. Now left with how many electrons? That's 3, because the atomic number of aluminium is what? 13. So since we have 10 here, it will be left with 3. So we put 3 electrons at the M shell. So 3 electrons. So that is the electronic configuration of aluminium. Alright, so let's use the electronic configuration of aluminium to determine its group and period. So let's start with the period first. So with the period, for you to find the period of any element, you have to count the number of shells the element is having in its electronic configuration. So we have how many elements here? Let's count. Sorry, how many shells here? Let's count. 1, 2, 3. So number of shells over here is 3. So we have 3 shells. So these 3 shells tells you the period of what? Of aluminium. So let's go to the periodic table. So let's look at the period 3. So 1, 2, 3. So can we find aluminium here? Yes, aluminium is here. So aluminium is on what? Period what? 3. So that is how we find the period of an element using its electronic configuration. The next one, let's use the electronic configuration to find its group. Alright, so to find the group of an element using its electronic configuration, we are going to use the valency shell electrons. The valency electrons. So the valency electrons are the electrons that are found on the outermost shell of the element. So let's look at the outermost shell. This is the outermost shell. And how many electrons are located on the outermost shell? We have 1, 2, 3. So the number of electrons in the outermost shell, we have number of electrons. In the outermost shell, we have 3 electrons. So let's look at the third group. So we have group 1, group 2, group 3. So group 3 is here, right? And we can find aluminium on the periodic table over here. So that is how to find the group and the period of an element on the using the electronic configuration of an atom. So let me summarize everything. So you can find the period and then the group of elements by drawing the periodic table. If the periodic table is not given to you, you can also use the atomic structure of the element to find its group and then its period. To find its period, you have to count the number of shells in the electronic configuration of that particular atom. And also to find its group, you have to count the number of electrons in its outermost shell. So thank you for watching. Please put your questions and your suggestions in the comment section. Like the video, subscribe if you have not done it. Share the video to your friends so that they can also watch and learn. Thank you.